light of the anomaly resolution team, and it sounds like it was a interesting episode, but that information hasn't been included in any of the updates that were posted so far. And you all talk so much about how important this mission is, and that it's the first human spacecraft in 50 years, and your number 4 of your objectives is public outreach. I would just request that whatever you can do to provide more detailed and more timely status reports of the mission, even if things are not all knit together and here's the outcome. It's really important to us to kind of be able to follow along as these things are happening. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Irene, and I certainly understand your feedback on the Star Tracker, what I'll call glitch or anomaly. That one was not a high-level concern. It just was one of those what I'll call confusing discrepancies that took us a little bit of time to work through. But I certainly understand the feedback there. And in terms of the ITAR issue, I am not fully up to speed on the issue at Pad 39B, but what has been shared with me is that the mobile launcher has flight interfaces on it that are considered export controlled, and not all of those are in a configuration that are ready to be photographed and shared. And there's some amount of work that needs to be done to get those in a configuration. And prior images that have been shared were either shared at a low enough resolution where that was not an issue, or were shared such that the umbilical interfaces were not in a full view, such that they were export or ITAR controlled. So that's my understanding of it. I am not an ITAR expert, but that's what I know on that particular topic, and I understand why you're asking, and I would just ask for your patience as we work through that one.
Thanks, Mike. Our next question comes from James Hillhouse with americaspace.com.
Thank you, guys, for holding this briefing. I have a couple of questions. I guess the first one is, what is Orion's velocity going to be at the equigravisphere, I guess where the Earth and the Moon's gravity are equal? And the other question has to do with the smaller correction burns you mentioned. Are those being done by the auxiliary engines on the ESM or the ESM's reaction control thrusters? Thank you.
Yeah, I'll take that question. First of all, we don't have the exact velocity at the sphere of influence. We know it's approximately 35,000 miles from the Moon, where Orion will then become under the primary influence of the Moon's gravity. But we don't have that exact figure available to us at this point. I can tell you again that the outbound powered flyby burn, Orion will be traveling at 1.5 kilometers per second relative to the Earth. With respect to the correction burns, we've performed 2 of those to date. The first, which we call OTC-1, or Outbound Trajectory Correction 1. This one was done as a check out of the OMS engine.
Esta conferencia se trata de una previa, la agarré enganchada, se me pasó la hora, estaba laburando en casa y se me pasó sinceramente. Y estoy acreditado como prensa, pero ni llamé porque ya están en la parte final de preguntas y respuestas. Estaban hablando de lo que va a ser el encendido el lunes de motor para insertar Orión en la órbita retrógrada lunar, que va a estar una semana dando vueltas. También hubieron problemas en la torre de lanzamiento, la 39, que el cohete destruyó parte de la torre, algunas cosas.
I thought the flight rule required 2 operational trackers for a full duration mission, and so I totally understand it's been resolved. I just would have thought that was a potentially more significant issue, but obviously not. Anyway, Mike, you said hazards at the pad. What does that mean? I mean, I'm not looking for a detailed assessment, but does that mean like debris somebody could trip over, a commodities issue, power lines down? I mean, any little details you can share? And for Jeff, You said 70 nautical miles at close approach. I saw something else that it was 70 statute. I just want to make sure I'm doing the right conversion. Thanks.
Do you want to take the mileage thing? I'll take the rest of it.
Sure. So the best information I have is 70 nautical miles, and I think that's really what we do our trajectory planning in. So that's the number I would use. Of course, I'll happy to be double checking with my flight design folks, who I'm sure will call me after this press briefing if I didn't get it right. And nautical miles is the
Va a pasar a unos 80 kilómetros de la Luna la nave en la primera vuelta.
I do want to address the star tractors real quick.
Hoy hicieron una corrección más de motor.
Violated the flight rules. The star trackers were functioning sufficient that we could continue on with the mission. It was really a case where we were seeing something we didn't understand. And so you are correct that we do need the star trackers to continue on with the mission, but at all times they were providing us measurements that were able to allow the mission to proceed. And so while we saw something we didn't quite understand, the hardware was operating sufficiently that we were able to continue the mission. And of course, we talk in what if it doesn't work, but in this case, it continued to work sufficiently well enough.
Han tenido problemas con los rastreadores que tienen, ahí dice que hay algo que recibieron que no entienden. Entonces, la prensa le pregunta, dice, ¿qué es lo que pasa? ¿Complica eso que no están funcionando los dos? Dice, no. El tema es que hay alguna cosa de los datos que no entendemos, dice, pero no nos permite, pero complica para seguir con la misión.
That one was not violating the flight rule. It was again something that we didn't fully understand, and we needed to get a brain trust together.
Pero dice, ¿cómo tenés ese código, men? ¿De qué está hablando?
And it didn't take that long. That said, I understand again the feedback, Bill, and apologize that we didn't share that sooner. This is a bit of a marathon in terms of launching from the Kennedy Space Center, getting safely through translunar injection. We provided an update to each and every one of you after launch, and that was after a very long day. And then I'm speaking for myself. I think I went and took a nap at the hotel for about 3 hours, and then was notified that we had a funny with the star tracker. We did note that, and then I believe we noted that, and then we had the anomaly resolution discussion the afternoon of the 15th. Again, I'm speaking for myself. I took a power nap and then got on a plane here to Houston the next
Roberto
day.
Parra, gracias por estar ahí, gracias por esos saludos también.
And that was on the funny list, and we had over a dozen funnies on the list. So we are proceeding, given the information that we have, and that was not seen.
Bueno, una de las cosas que dijeron hace unos pocos minutos es que no va a haber video en directo cuando la cápsula haga el encendido de motor. Y la prensa enseguida le preguntó por qué, con la tecnología que hoy se tiene. Dice, hace 50 años pudimos ver el video en directo en la Luna, cuando Armstrong puso el pie en la Luna, y hoy no podemos ver esa nave en directo. Bueno, la explicación fue muy clara. La nave va a estar detrás de la Luna. Entonces no tenemos cómo mandarlo directo el video para acá. Pero lo descargaremos apenas esté visible.
Is something that's just causing us to take a little more time. So the team is proceeding out of an abundance of caution to get the full system status for the mobile launcher, and they're working their way through that. I would just again ask for a little bit of patience as we work through it. It's been 2 days since we launched, and it's just taken a little bit of time.
We have time for just a couple more questions this evening. Our next will come from Sophie Sanchez with Cosmic Chicago.
Hi, thank you. This question is for Mike. Sorry to, go on about the star trackers again, but you mentioned that the issue being with the thruster firing, I understand that the software is working, but do you expect the dazzling to be a recurring issue as you continue to use the thrusters? I mean, just going forward in future missions, they're going to rely on these star trackers. And then if you can tell us, where are the two star trackers located on Orion in relation to each other and the thrusters? And just, a follow-up question on that. On media. Is there going to be any more engineering footage from the launch offered? And, we've been expecting more views, not only of the mission, but also from the launch pad. Thank you.
I'll split the Star Tracker question, Sophie, and again, thank you for your question. We do expect this to be a normal phenomenon with the Star Trackers. It just it was something that we didn't initially understand, and it is a normal feature of this specific configuration of the Orion spacecraft. Jim, do you want to talk about kind of the orientation and just how the system is
Yo llegué
configured
tarde,
now?
entonces no entendía de qué hablaban. Los trackers, en realidad, son dos sistemas de seguimiento de estrellas que tiene Orión para ubicarse. Star Tracker está hablando, no de traqueo de la Tierra.
The onboard software of Orion is looking for that information. Occasionally, when we see this dazzling phenomenon, the software may get a flag or generate a flag saying, I'm not ready to incorporate that data into my navigation filter. Now, this is a temporary situation. The Star Tracker keeps trying to acquire attitude knowledge, and when it's ready, it then clears that flag and the software is able to reset.
Tienen un problema de software, de comunicación entre el sistema que traquea las estrellas, que es duplicado, y el sistema de navegación, que dice que hay algo que no entienden, que coloca una bandera, una flag, o sea, un aviso de error, y no sigue adelante, pero que igual de todas maneras sigue trabajando y le permite seguir con la misión. O sea, por favor, no hay caso con el tema de los problemas de software que están teniendo en las misiones estas, ¿no?
90 degrees apart, as well as the optical navigation system, which is a different camera is used to help navigate through deep space. So these cameras, the Star Trackers and the optical navigation camera, are located at the aft end here. And if you recall the orientation of the service module, there are pods of reaction control thrusters oriented throughout 90 degrees apart. One of these pods is located pretty close to the Star Tracker base, and that's what is causing the dazzling phenomenon. But it's a very tightly packed orientation. We have radiators and Star Trackers and many other equipment on that service module. And so this is just something that teams have seen in past spaceflight, and we're prepared to deal with it with no impact to the mission.
Dice que es algo que ya hemos visto en misiones anteriores y no va a impactar en la misión. Lockheed Martin hizo la cápsula de esta Orión. Lockheed Martin, entre otras cosas, es fabricante del famoso caza F-16, que se vuela totalmente por cable, o sea, por computadoras, ¿no?
Also relative to each other, the thrusters and the optical sensors. In terms of more media release, yes, absolutely. We will share footage from the launch, the launch phase, the ascent through translunar injection. As Jeff was indicating earlier, we do have to manage bandwidth for any information that is recorded on board the Orion spacecraft. We do that through the Deep Space Network, and there are many, many other customers, science customers, that use the Deep Space Network, and we need to be good stewards of that resource. There is a capacity that we share there with other customers. But the data that is on the ground, we do need to go through that from a export control and compliance process. That is not something that NASA imposes on itself. That is a federal law that we, because we have dual use technology, have to comply with, and there is a process to do that. And we have folks that literally have to look through every still image and every video that's released when it comes to dual use technology that is on the export compliance and the international arms and traffic regulations list. And it is a byproduct of the type of system and the type of mission that we fly. We don't choose that for ourselves. It is just something that we have to comply with. So again, I would just ask for your patience and let us work through that process. And we will absolutely share what we can as soon as it's available. There are many, many images out there. I probably have seen like maybe 1% of them just in what little time that I've had here in Houston. But my focus, my personal focus, is on working with these gentlemen and the teams that they represent to accomplish the objectives and do so safely. And we have other team members that are focused on sharing with the general public and all of you in the media what we can as soon as we can.
Bueno, te estuvo hablando del tema de los videos, que van a compartir más videos apenas puedan bajarlo de la cápsula.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for doing this. So Mike, you mentioned there were a dozen or so funnies that you were working through the day after launch. Do any of those stick out as significant or remain unresolved? And then going into this decision tomorrow on whether to enter the distant retrograde orbit, what sticks out to you on that checklist and what could prevent that from being a no answer? Thank you.
Yeah, Jackie, that's a great question. In terms of our readiness to commit to the distant retrograde orbit and the decision gate tomorrow, there is nothing that sticks out as a clear no-go or a lean against what we've seen. Of the 13 funnies that we've seen, we talked about the Star Tracker component ready flag. We had a coolant loop 1 flow rate funny, where we saw a momentary drop in the flow rate, and it's happening episodically, which indicates that there's gas in that fluid line that has a propylene glycol water mixture. We're getting proper cooling on the coolant loop 1 specifically. We've seen a number of issues with file transfers from the solar array wingtip cameras. They have memory and recorders on board. They use a Wi-Fi system to get imagery into the cockpit. Obviously, imagery, we love it. We want to share it as much as we can. We want to record it. But if we're having issues getting it off of the vehicle, that actually slows the effort to share things with the team. And Jeff and his team in the FOD team in Mission Control have worked through that. They've kind of figured out how to work through the system. And part of this is with the Deep Space Network and understanding when we have the availability to do that. We did have a number of communications glitches, some of which are behind us during the launch phase. We had either forward or return link problems, but we did capture a lot of data during the launch phase. And we've seen that the spacecraft is running a little hotter.
Pablo, el bot te eliminó porque escribiste en mayúsculas. ¿Pero cómo estás? ¿Todo bien?
Those and some other micro switches and brake latch indications on the solar array wings, all those, the team has documented, worked through to understand, is this a thermal thing? Is it a micro switch thing? But overall, the system is performing really well. And right now, we don't have any again, hard leans or hard no-goes against the commit point to the outbound powered flyby. But that said, that decision gate is tomorrow. There's always a chance that something could happen between the time that we're talking and tomorrow, and our risk posture and our situation could change. So we're just going to wait. We're going to give it more time. We're going to give the teams more time to assess all the data that we have and to continue to shake down the spacecraft as we head outbound. and wait for that decision gate and make that decision when it's time. It's not time to make that decision right now. And I don't know, Jim, do you have anything to add in terms of the anomalies? Anything stick out in your mind that would be a hard no-go?
No, I think you characterized it very well. We're learning some things about the system that we didn't see in ground testing. But again, the system performance has, in general, exceeded expectations, and everything points to being able to accomplish the outbound powered flyby and continue the mission.
Okay. And Jeff, from your
Bueno, dice que
you're
todo lo que respecta a la nave, no hay nada que impida seguir, no hay nada que impida seguir la misión, que está todo en go.
Is very clean, right? We're learning things on a first flight vehicle. A lot of that, honestly, is the operators going, hey, this didn't look like the way I expected it, but then we look at it a little bit longer and we say, well, that's performance that's acceptable. It may not be what we expected, but it is acceptable performance and it allows us to proceed. So there's a lot of that learning that's going on. And, you know, right now, all the systems are meeting all of our flight rules to press for OPF. You know, as Mike mentioned, the MMT will make that decision tomorrow, but right now we're looking good and we're ready to go continue executing.
Yeah, so I think what you're hearing here, Jackie and Irene and others that have asked some of these questions, is we had an understanding of the system headed into the mission. We had predicts. We had, you know, whether it was how much power we consume or how much propellant or how hot the vehicle would be. And we're not exactly matching that. And in most cases, it is performing better. We're using less power. We're using less propellant. It's a little bit warmer than we thought it would be, so maybe we don't need the heaters as much. We're seeing things that don't quite match our predictions. And the team is spending the time to go through that and doing it with a fine-tooth comb to make sure that there isn't something else there that is potentially a latent issue or something that would give us concern.
Dice, estamos también entendiendo todo esto, ¿no?
You got to recall that the distant retrograde orbit is a non-Earth return trajectory. We are deliberately going to put ourselves in an orbit about the moon and stress test this vehicle. So before we do that and before we commit to it, we're going to look at every rock. We're going to turn every rock over. We're going to make sure that we understand thoroughly.
Claro, fíjense, no lo está diciendo, pero esta es la primera vez que entra una órbita retrógrada a la Luna. Entonces, quieren aprender muy bien todo sobre todo esto, ¿no?
And a huge thanks again to our briefers for taking time out of their very busy schedules to discuss the upcoming outbound powered flyby burn and entrance of Orion into the lunar sphere of influence. We'll be covering the OPF burn live on NASA TV beginning at 6:15 a.m. Central, 7:15 a.m. Eastern.
Esto es lo que tenemos previsto para el lunes.
¿Sí? With our daily blog posts as Orion continues its journey to the moon and beyond at blogs.nasa.gov/Artemis. So thanks again for joining us. That will wrap up today's briefing.
Bueno, termina el briefing de hoy con esto. En realidad, esta es la presentación del próximo, ¿sí? Así que, bueno, vamos a detener un poquito y voy a hacer un poquito de recapitulación en lo que estamos hablando. Déjenme ver que tenemos ahí duplicado el chat. No debería estar, ok, ahora sí. Concretamente, lo más importante de lo que salió de este briefing es que la nave Orión al despegar rompió parte de la torre 39 de donde despegó por el escape enorme de los gases que se ve que no lo tenían tan considerado. Algunos de los daños que hubo hace que los ascensores para subir a la torre no están funcionando, que es lo primero que tienen que reparar. Y dice que van a hacer una investigación de todos los daños que ha hecho, porque obviamente tienen que arreglarlo. Y todo eso está en el sistema de servicio de tierra, o sea, en lo que es el crawler, el aparato que mueve todo el cohete. Dice que el tema del agua, por ejemplo, ha salvado mucho daño, o sea, el daño en el cohete, que es lo principal, pero no ha salvado todas las cosas de la torre que tienen que ver. Y lo otro más importante para nosotros es que el lunes van a hacer esta transmisión que pusimos, va a ser en la mañana temprano, próximo al mediodía para quienes están en Europa, ya está previsto el video. Y si dejan hasta todo el final, lo lleva directo para activar el recordatorio. No vamos a ver en directo imágenes, eso ya lo dijeron. Es una lástima, pero ¿por qué no lo vamos a ver? Porque la nave va a pasar por detrás de la Luna y no hay forma de tener los datos directos. Quizá en el momento en que haya satélites que hagan el puente entre las naves y la Tierra, ahí podamos tener videos en directo. Pero hoy lo único que hay es el satélite cubo que envió Rocket Lab, Capstone, que no está previsto para hacer este tipo de cosas, y el orbiter, el reconocimiento lunar, que tampoco está previsto para este tipo de cosas. Y aparte está totalmente, me imagino que obsoleto como para esto. Así que bueno, en definitiva, eso es un poco el recuento de todo esto. Les agradezco a todos, como siempre, por haber estado acá. Nos vemos. Ni que hablar. Por ahora, seguía viendo que estaba previsto el lanzamiento de ahora de noche, en la madrugada, de Starlink. No tengo exacta confirmación del tema. Voy a revisar ya por las dudas si SpaceX ha comunicado algo. Sí, lo pasaron para el 22, así que no tenemos lanzamiento esta noche. ¿Ah? Ya lo estoy corrigiendo, así no creamos falsas expectativas. Ahí está guardado. Vamos a ver la hora que va a ser. Uy, qué hora. 3:54 p.m. hora del este. Ah, no, temprano en la tarde. 3. Ya lo corrijo también. El 22 en la tarde. Bueno, ahí está colocado. Así que bueno, con esto un abrazo enorme, gracias a todos por haber estado ahí. A ver si veo los últimos mensajes antes de despedirme. El lunes hay también un lanzamiento hacia la ISS, no SS seguramente. Decía Álvaro de la Fuente, estoy de acuerdo Marcos, que sigue preocupado Marcos sobre cómo una agencia tan importante como la NASA hace tan aburridas las conferencias de prensa, pudiendo aplicarles mucho multimedia. Bueno, eso sí, lamentablemente Marcos, pero muy buen comentario. No, ¿cómo puede ser que dos youtubers, dije dos en cada mano, dos youtubers como TIENDA y NASA Spaceflight publican mejores videos que la propia NASA de su lanzamiento? Es inentendible, eso es inentendible. Pero bueno, así están las cosas. Un abrazo enorme a todos. Nos vemos en cuanto aparezca algo. Vale la pena estar suscritos, ¿no? Scotty, suscríbeme a la cocina, que tengo la cena pronta. Nos vemos. Chau, chau. Teletransportame.